You know, we all served our country. When we were called and asked, we didn't run to Canada or Mexico, we served. But there's something about the prisoners of war that were much different than we served. We served our country. They took a beating for it. So it's my honor to introduce my good friend, Ralph Galati.
What's his name again?
I don't recommend going for a plane ride with him, because last plane ride he took crashed. So don't go anywhere near the airport across the street. But Ralph, God bless you, my friend.
Do I need this?
No.
Thanks. It's a great honor to be here. Thanks. Thanks for the POW ceremony. Actually, it's the Missing in Action ceremony. I have some stories and some anecdotes. It's not a presentation because I don't do those. But if you have any questions, just interrupt me. But somebody has to keep track of where the hell I am because I'll wander around. One fact, everything is going to be out of sequence, and I apologize. But I'm old.
Welcome to the crowd.
There are still, just for those that aren't aware, there are still more than 81,000 missing in action since World War II. So 15 years ago when I started doing these speeches a little more often, it was over 92,000. So we're making progress. But of those 80-some thousand, half of them were lost at sea. So they're probably not going to get found. But that means 80,000 families still awaiting. So that's what the chair and the table and a lot of the ceremonies are about. POWs, you know, we came home, we got to welcome home. It's the missing in action that we have to worry about. So I'll start off with a few things. Since it's Sunday, I could give you a quote from Isaiah the prophet. For those of you that didn't go to church, this counts as church. But there's a saying there that I've read, and it seems more appropriate to talk about military people and their service and their commitment. And it's a story about the prophet Isaiah responds to God's call by volunteering to be God's messenger. After a vision in which he felt unworthy, Isaiah was cleansed and then heard God ask, "Whom shall I send, and who will go for us?" And Isaiah's immediate response was, "Here am I, send me." And as soon as I read that, I said, that sounds like service members. That sounds like military people saying, "I'm ready to go." And that is commendable. I know there's a bunch of military people here. I know there's a couple of Marines here.
Hurrah!
So for the civilians in the audience, whenever there's Marines or Navy people in the audience, I have to be careful never to use large words because... And then with the Army people that are here, I'll try to speak really slowly so you can keep up, okay? So who's left? Did I offend everybody, Joe? Are we okay? Good.
You left out the Air
So,
Force.
what's that?
You left out the
Air Force is exempt.
Force.
By the way, really. Do you see a lot of the similarities here? Come on, thank you. Really, look, come on. All right, good. Okay, enough of that. So if you don't get a sense now, this is going to be kind of lighthearted. Okay, and if you have any questions, we'll do it. So, I was shot down in February of 1972. So for those that have a history issue, the Vietnam War kind of started in '55, got really started back around '64, and then went on to '73, and then ended in '75. So when I talk about Vietnam era, it's '55 to '75, but the war was '64 to '73. I was shot down at the very, very end. It's February of '72. And I say that because when I got shot down, I was practically the first guy shot down in 4 years because there was a ceasefire over North Vietnam from '68 to '72. So one of our missions when we got there was to update the older guys. Like I said, I'm going to ramble a lot. So anybody know who the first aviator POW in Hanoi was? Joe, you promised me these guys were going to have their shit together. It was a Navy guy named Everett Alvarez. Everett, he was shot down in August of '64. When he was released, he'd been there 8.5 years. So I was there 14 months. So I want to put that in perspective. So one of our missions was to update the guys that had been there for 4 to 8 years and had no new news since 1968. And our job was to communicate with them and kind of give them an update on what was going on back home. Because when they left, you know, all the anti-war activity was going on and nobody understood why we were over there. And there was just a lot going on. So we had to update them on everything. Woodstock, the British music invasion, the assassinations in 1968, the space race, landing on the moon, who the hell the president was. I mean, you name it, everything that went on. And I joked that they didn't really care about any of that. The first question they asked was, are the girls still wearing miniskirts? So just to mess with their heads, we told them no. I did some out of secret. So veterans that are here, thank you for your service. It's important to make sure we thank family members, spouses, and moms for your sacrifice. It was really significant. If there's any Gold Star families here, your sacrifice is beyond words, but thank you for that. And also thanks to, of course, Peggy in the back. Thank you for inviting me today. It means a great deal to me. Thanks. Joe promised to reimburse me for bridge tolls, but he's been promising me that for 10 years. I'm not going to see that. But some of the things I'm going to talk about have to do with freedom and POW camp, and I want to say that because they're important. And there's another quote. It says, "To those that fought for it," which is any veterans here in the audience, "freedom has a flavor the protected will never know." And that is really true. When I got shut down, I spent the first week in isolation and then 2 months in solitary, and then I got a room.
Did you go through jungle survival school?
Say again?
Did you go through jungle survival school?
Yeah, I went through all the survival schools. Jungle, land, water, all of
I
them.
did too.
POW training, it was invaluable.
That's what I'm saying, the training, that's what I was leading up to.
Yeah.
The training really helped you?
Yeah, it was. It wasn't perfect, but it gave you a mindset that prepared you a little bit. Yeah.
Ralph, that was a great question. Was your training anything like the real thing?
It was close. I mean, obviously they couldn't do everything. They weren't allowed to beat the shit out of you, but they tried to at least give you a sense of what to expect, because by 1971, when I went through survival school, some POWs had already come back and they updated everybody about how to handle, you know, what to do in SEER school or survival school. So yeah, it was a little more realistic, but some training was better than none. So, see, now I've lost track of where the hell I was. I have no idea. Yeah, it is. I have no idea where I was. So, I was talking about freedom.
Miniskirts.
No, we're past miniskirts. Come on, get your head going on straight. Navy, no, Marine.
Marine.
So there you go. That's the end of that. That's the end. So anyway, I'm in solitary and 2.5 months, and when you've lost 100% of your freedoms, all of a sudden now, I got shot down on the 16th of February, and now the 17th of February was when the fun and games began. And now I'm in a cell where I have nothing. I mean, no air, I mean, basically nothing. No medical attention, no toilet, no food, no noise, no light, nothing. And the only thing you had any control over was the air, and the air was putrid. So when you've lost 100% of every freedom you've ever had, you really understand what freedom is, and you start to appreciate it even more. And later on, I'll tell a story about the significance of saluting the flag and things like that. The things you hold dear are really valuable and precious when you don't have it, when they're all taken away from you. So freedom is a really precious gift. I'll give you a 15-minute perspective. My first 15 minutes. Everything I'm about to describe took place in 15 minutes. We're flying combat missions over North Vietnam. We're in and out doing refueling. It was a hectic day. First time over North Vietnam in many years. We think we're doing okay, and then all of a sudden there's a big thump in the back of the aircraft. My airplane Peggy has in the back was an F-4 Phantom, so a 2-seat jet fighter, and all of a sudden our engine goes to zero, our hydraulics goes to zero, our electrical goes to zero. The warning lights are flashing. Red lights are never good in an airplane, never good. Especially when it's RPMs, you know, it's like everything was zero. F-4 is a great airplane, except when the engines go out. And then it has the aerodynamics of a large rock. But fortunately, we were really low because we were flying as forward air controllers, so we were very low. So we didn't have a lot of time to do anything. But the aircraft held intact, and we managed to do a successful ejection and parachute landing. So disregard how you might feel today. I'm the luckiest guy in this room, period. So the aircraft could have exploded. It did not, so I survived that. The ejection seat could have malfunctioned. It did not. I survived that. By the way, the ejection seat is made by a company called Martin Baker Company in London. They're my best friends. The ejection seat has to work 100% of the time, but only once. Okay? But that happens. So too. The parachute opened successfully. Okay, I avoided that the third time. Now we're floating down into the village that we're bombing during Tet, which is their big holiday season. That was not good. The aircraft lands in the village and crashes. That's not good. Now they start shooting at us in the parachute. So fortunately they were bad shots, but I escaped that the fourth time. Now all I cared about was making a successful parachute landing fall. You know, where just land and not kill yourself after all that. Most of you guys that were in South Vietnam know it's all jungles and marsh and crud. I happened to be flying in an area that was farmland. So now there's no place to run, no place to hide. And I'm landing down now in the village, and they're shooting at us, but I made a successful parachute landing fall, didn't kill myself 5 times. And then the villagers decided that they were just going to beat the hell out of us, which they did. One guy came over, and I swear it was the guy that was shooting at us, and he had an old wooden stock rifle, and he decides to take the stock end of the rifle and try to crack my skull open, which he did. So that was 6. So that, I just described 15 minutes, okay, from impact to landing. So when you escape death that many times, you're in good shape. A few minutes later, a young reservist, we think, or a guardsman or somebody came and said, took us to safety, probably realizing that he had orders that said if we ever see an alien coming from outer space and they land, get them to Hanoi and you probably get a reward. So we were, you see where the demilitarized zone separates north from south? We were just north of that. It was really close to the border. And so the mission now was to get us from there all the way up to Hanoi, which is in the center of the ring, the capital. That took about a day, and then February 17th was my first day in captivity, and that's when all the activity started. So when you are in isolation, and I was young, I was 23, I was a first lieutenant. That was my 69th combat mission. I'd been there about 3 months, so we flew a lot, almost every day. I was just kind of getting my act together as an adult, as an officer, as an aviator, so it was just kind of feeling comfortable. But the next day was interrogations and starvation and the usual stuff, the beatings. And the challenge there was following what we call the code of conduct. We all had some training in the code of conduct. And what it is a set of rules, guidelines about how to behave if you're ever taking capture as a POW. And it starts out with the hardest of the 6 articles. It says, I'm an American fighting for our country and our way of life. I'm prepared to give my life in its defense. And that last phrase is significant because everybody from the president on down in our government, everybody in the military, in your commissioning or your enlistment oath, anybody held elected official, period, nobody has to say, I'm prepared to give my life in its defense. You say I have to protect the Constitution and all that, but so I remember reading that, and it was easy for me to say. Now I'm like, Jesus, now I have to be prepared to die. The rest of the code of conduct was difficult, but easy compared to that. It was name, rank, serial number, date of birth. If I'm senior, I'll take charge, which was not a problem for me because I was the second youngest and the second most junior all the time. So I barely was in charge of me. Keep faith with your fellow POW. You will not accept the role or special favors from the enemy. Make every attempt to escape. Okay, that was our guidance, and that's what we lived by. So that was what I had to do for 75 days while I was alone. And the challenge was when you are starved and injured and not on your A game because you haven't been sleeping well, interrogations are usually in favor of the enemy and not you. And if you don't have your act together, it'd be easy to spill your guts. And I remember going through those, and I thought I was doing okay. But guilt is a big issue. It started day one, which is now I've lost an airplane. I wasted all this great money the military spent on me in terms of training, and now you start to feel bad about yourself. And now you have interrogations, and you realize how much more you suck. And then your planning horizon was really short, because you just wanted to survive an interrogation, and you just wanted to make me survive for 1 hour. Long-range planning was different. Your long-range plan was 1 day. You just wanted to live to fight another day. And I was doing I was going through it, and I thought I was doing okay. I kept saying, look, I don't remember. Look, head injury, I don't remember. I'm dazed, I'm confused, I'm an Italian from South Philly. Whatever the hell worked is what I said. I'm young, I'm not flying combat, I didn't know anything, I'm stupid. And I got away with that for a couple of sessions, and then one day I'm sitting across from the guy, and I feel a rifle in the back of my head. And I said, you know what? They could kill me now, and nobody would ever they just say, got killed in ejection. So it was kind of a rude awakening, and I remember that very vividly. And anyway, that went on for a couple weeks, and then the rest of it was good days were just boredom. A really good day was when they just left you alone, when you didn't hear the jangling, jingle jangle of keys where they're coming to yank you out to do something. Day 76, I got a roommate, which was my pilot. And we had never flown before. His picture's back there with mine, Bill Schwarzenegger. He was back on his second tour, so he was a little more experienced. But Ralph Galati got really brave when I had a roommate. And the more roommates I got, the braver I got. And it was just like any guys that were in combat. When you had a buddy that had your back, things were a lot different. And then we ended up, because the war was really heating up over North Vietnam, more of our guys were being shot down. And I ended up spending most of my time in the Hanoi Hilton, which was one of about a dozen POW camps scattered around Hanoi. And it was the largest and the most famous. And we had 6 or 7 rooms of about 30 guys each, so maybe 200, 250 guys in the camp, each room having about 30 people. And we were surrounded for the most part by these older guys in the sense of captivity old. And our mission was, as I described, was to update them on everything that was going on, but also they were giving us feedback in terms of camp guidance, leadership guidance, how to handle interrogations, how to handle survival, all the things that we needed based on their 4 to 8 years of experience. And it was really, really invaluable. So that's kind of what we did every day. And a lot of it was just going through isolation, solitary. I mean, I mentioned all that. We didn't have toilets. When my first roommate, after 2.5 months, was my pilot, and they put us in a section of the Hanoi Hilton called Heartbreak Hotel, which was, I forget, 6 or 8 cells, 2-person cells, just cement slabs with leg irons. That was it, about 6 by 8. And our roommates were mosquitoes, geckos, and rats. And one thing about North Vietnam, the people were tiny, but the rats were really healthy. I'm not kidding, the rats were the size of cats. I mean, you could actually hear them on the cement. They were really, really healthy. And then no freedom. So day to day was a challenge. But you saw it through, and there was a thing we used to call grog, or swill, or soup. So just think of ingredients in your soup. And I put my commentaries around, an ingredient could be faith, it could be your family, it could be your friends, it could be your education, your training, your survival schools, whatever. There's 5 or 6 ingredients in this mix, and you're shocked when someday you might need, the survival skills, and you kind of tap into that, and other days you tap into something else. The one you tapped into the most, believe it or not, was your faith. And the old expression, there's no atheists in foxholes, really true. Everybody prayed. So we're now these young guys, young in terms of captivity time, Some of us were just there 6 months, others had just been shot down, and now we got these older guys that we were modeling ourselves against. And resistance was important, and we thought it would be dishonorable. It would be disrespectful for us not to do our best as newer guys, knowing what they really went through for torturous years. So as newer POWs, we were trying to figure out ways to flex our muscles, to show our resistance, to uphold some kind of honor and dignity. So we decided we were going to have a church service. And we communicated covertly with the other rooms, and they said, no, the North Vietnamese hate that. So we said, all right, we're going to do it. So we put together one, and now we're in a room of almost 30 guys, and we started out with God Bless America. We didn't get through like 2 sentences. And the North Vietnamese come in and jangle the keys, open the door, yell and scream, no, unacceptable, blah, 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 blah. So we stopped, but next Sunday we did it again, except we started to sing even louder. Because we were stupid, but also because it was important. It was important to us from the dignity standpoint and resistance that we wanted to, it made us feel good. But we also knew that there were going to be reprisals. We weren't sure what it was going to be, but all 30 of us knew that whatever happened, we were all in. So we started singing again. The Vietnamese come in, they yell and scream again. They said, no food. And we said, thank you. The food sucked. By the way, I didn't recognize anything I ate for a year. Did not know what the hell I ate until somebody else said, oh, that's pumpkin soup. I recognized potato, kohlrabi, bean curd, weeds. I mean, whatever they gave you, you ate. And they got bread in the morning. Remember where I was, by the way, with the church service. I got bread in the morning, and it was just full of insects because there was no sanitation. So what you do is if it's not moving, you eat it. It's good protein. If it's moving, you kill it, and then you eat it, because it's good protein. So we had this church service, and no food, and we said, we can handle that. Next Sunday, we did it again, sang even louder. Guards came in, yelled and screamed, took a couple of guys out, beat the hell out of them all day, and threw them back in the cell. Next Sunday, we did it again, knowing full well. This time they came in with guns. But we thought we made our point. So we kept doing them, but we were a little more subdued. But it was really important because we had to feel good about us as well as resisting the enemy. Because as non-combatants, there was little we could do other than make a stink. Because if there were more people watching us, that was fewer people that were shooting at Americans. At least that was our logic. So we did that, and that was our method of resistance. We continued to covertly communicate with the older guys. Go back, I remember when I was in solitary, and it was at least a month in one of the camps, and I didn't know where I was. I didn't know if there were any POWs. I didn't know anything. I'm just literally in the dark. And then one day, the little slot on our cell door opens, and somebody throws a stick at me. And then the door closed. And I figured, everything was bad. Now they're like throwing stuff at me. But I went, I was stupid, but I wasn't that stupid. I went over and got this little twig. And I'm looking at it and said, there's got to be something to this. And I could see it was hollowed out, and I played around with it a little bit, and there was a note inside, about a little bit bigger than a postage stamp. And basically it said, in kind of encrypted language, very abbreviated, hang in there, you're not alone, GBU. And that was it. And now I realized, I am not alone. Somebody was taking a risk to let me know, kind of hang in there. And I remember saying, I got to remember this guy's initials so that if I ever meet him, I want to thank him for taking a risk and letting me know that, I was not alone. By the way, GBU, as it turned out later, was not his initials. GBU was God bless you. And in our POW correspondence to this day, when you send emails to somebody, they all end GBU. It is kind of remarkable. See, now I lost where the hell I was. By the way, don't get old.
Church service.
Really, yeah, I did the church service, okay. Oh, so It's really bad when the Marines have to help you keep the Air Force in track. It's so discouraging. So we're now communicating with the longer-term POWs and delivering these messages, and I told you before about the miniskirts and all that stuff. The single biggest message of hope that we delivered to the old guys was in 1970, 71, when they created, it's probably here, the POW MIA flag.
Yeah.
You familiar with it? That was actually modeled after a missing in action husband. The Hoff. Michael. Oh, the Hoff. Okay. And then we had this bracelet campaign, POW bracelets, of which Peggy has a nice booth back there. When we told them about that, amongst all the other anti-war sentiment, when we told them that they had not been forgotten or abandoned, that was the biggest morale boost that we could give the guys that were there 4 to 8 years. And the fact that they might actually be welcomed home was remarkable. I mean, that was the one good thing we could actually tell them. Now, fast forward a bit. We got released in February and March of 1973. It's called Repatriation. I gave Peggy a picture of the Hanoi taxi, which is the C-141.
It's right behind you.
Oh, here it is, thanks. We all got released in stages on a C-141. They started like this February 10th or 12th, and they released 30 or 40 at a time. One was because that was kind of the capacity of the plane, and the other was they weren't sure at Clark Air Base in the Philippines what kind of messed up bodies we were going to be. So they wanted to be sure they could handle us all. As it turned out, I think we surprised them that we were in relatively good shape. But I was the next to the last day, March 28th, 1973. And if you've ever seen pictures of the guys on the airplane where they're raising their hands and screaming,
Watch it every night.
that was my flight. If you ever see that picture, believe it or not, that was my flight. But that picture was taken 20 minutes after takeoff. I want to get back to repatriation. And that was 20 minutes after takeoff meant we were out over the Pacific. And since we hadn't been shot down yet, we figured we were safe. That's how crazy it was. But anyway, repatriation occurred in stages, and we weren't really sure. We didn't know the war had ended, other than the fact that in December, right around Christmas, for 10 or 12 days, B-52s were bombing the hell out of Hanoi. And I talked to some B-52 pilots, and there were, every night except for Christmas, for like 14 or 18 days, 65 to 100 B-52s, each carrying 100 bombs. Do the math. Dropping bombs over Hanoi. We're in Hanoi. We're in the camps. And we knew B-52 guys weren't big on accuracy. They were just big on volume. You open the doors and bombs fall down and they hit the ground, and that's all they cared about. So they came really close to the camps. I mean, really close to the camps. But we survived that. To the point that when they were bombing, we were cheering. Vietnamese didn't like that. But we knew the only way we were getting the hell out of there was to bomb them into submission. Come January of '73, the bombing had stopped, but we didn't know anything that was going on. The Vietnamese told us some story, but we've been so used to hearing their propaganda lies that we didn't believe anything. All we knew was they were leaving us alone. A little more outside time. The food didn't change, but basically, we were taking care of each other health-wise. It wasn't until the day of repatriation, because we were scattered all over Hanoi, that we realized that this might actually be happening. They gave us civilian clothes. Joe has seen some of my civilian clothes. And they took us to the airport, and we thought, this is kind of promising. It doesn't look like a propaganda scheme. I remember looking down the line and seeing what looked like a military officer, like in an Air Force uniform, and we thought that was good. They announce your name, and we march up there and salute, and we get repatriated. We thought that was pretty good. A C-141 with a big red cross on the tail lands, and it wasn't shot down. That was pretty good. We get an escort officer that leads us across the tarmac into the back of the C-141, filled with nurses. I mean, it all looked good. And then 20 minutes later, we're out over the ocean, and we realized, this might actually be for real. We all landed at Clark Air Base in the Philippines, which is where they did our health check and mental check and made sure we were kind of okay. Everybody had issues. You had parasites, or you had dysentery, or worse. But they took really good care of us. They custom fit us right away for a uniform. They gave us all of our, whatever ribbons we had, whatever rank we were. So some guys were there long enough that their promotion cycle came up, and you were automatically promoted when you were there. Even the guys that didn't deserve it, they still got promoted. So they got their new rank. And then after about a day, when you had hot showers and hot meals, and they realized that you were probably not a basket case, they let you call your family. So I've been going a year and a half now. I'll fast forward, keep track. Okay? When I left, my wife was 6 months pregnant. We were talking about this. And I told her, I said, look, don't worry about me, I'll be okay. Everybody comes home, some bullshit. And I said, the only issue you're ever going to have is if you get a visit from a priest and a military officer, casualty assistance call, it is all over. So my daughter is born now on February 10th. I'm shot down on February 16th. My wife is just home from the hospital, and she gets the visit I went to St. Joe's, from a Jesuit priest and an ROTC captain making a casualty assistance call. I mean, she's literally out of the hospital like 2 days. She's 21 years old, brand new baby, living with my parents. My wife is British, by the way, living with Italians. Anyway, they deliver this news, and I remember my parents and wife saying they had to console the ROTC guy. He just could not deliver the message. He never had to do it before. So my parents, being my parents, invited them in and fed them. Well, sure, why not? So, and about a week later, they saw the announcement that Hanoi announced that we were captive. So fortunately, it didn't last very long. But nonetheless, so now I finally get to call my wife after I get released. And so now the baby is, 14 or 15 months old, and so we're getting caught up. She says, when are you coming home? I said, I have no idea. They weren't telling us much. I'm still in the Philippines, and I knew there was convalescent leave, and they wanted to be sure you were okay to travel, and then you had to leave the Philippines, stop in Hawaii, stop and make multiple stops across the country to let other people off the airplane. So it was orchestrated, but it was slow. And she's asking all these questions, and I'm usually, I don't know, but I think I'm okay. And then she says, by the way, what would you like your first meal to be when you came home? And I thought that was hysterical. I tell you, my wife was British, so her food sucked. All British food sucks. So I knew I wasn't going to get any of that food. But I was funny because my parents are Italian. I mean, my mom is a great cook. And I said, I can't understand why she would ask that question. I mean, there's going to be all this Italian food. But the first thing that came to my mind was, I just wanted a McDonald's hamburger. I wanted something American. So anyway, she thought that was funny. And she said, when are you going to be home? I said, I don't know. Maybe a week. I have no idea. So we leave a few days later, and then we make our stop across the country, and I end up doing convalescent leave at Andrews Air Force Base in Maryland. Was there for a few days, and then they take us home. Home was my parents' house. So the good news over here is I was one of 591 POWs released from the prison camps in Hanoi. There were more in the south, but in Hanoi, 591. We were welcomed home, spring of '73. 3 million of you guys were not welcomed home. So toxic, welcomed home. So we were happy to be home, but it was really uncomfortable. When you get parades and shit, it was really uncomfortable. Joe, I was just the Grand Marshal of the one in Philly. That's my first parade in 52 years for that. But I only did it because we hoped that we would help one better. So we finally get home after convalescent leave, and it's now, give me the exact date, but I'm going to say April 6th of 1973. finally make it to my parents' house, and it's at night, and there's a knock at the door, and it's the manager of the local McDonald's. I said, Lieutenant Galati, we read that you wanted a McDonald hamburger. And he says, we have some awards for you. One is he gave me a certificate with an honorary doctorate in hamburgerology. True thing, from the McDonald's University. And 2 boxes of business cards, and he says, look, we apologize. This was short notice. There were some mistakes on these cards, but nonetheless, there were business cards. 1,000 free hamburgers. And each card said, welcome home, Lieutenant Ralph Galati. This coupon's good for 1 free hamburger. He said it was supposed to be good at any store, kind of indefinitely, but it said only at his store in Folsom, Pennsylvania. The expiration date was April 30th. 24 days. When I got back at him, because I gave them to everyone that was in those parades. But I still have 2. So these 15-cent hamburgers are now worth $2.50. That's quite a steal. So that's kind of the overview. I do that just to give you a sense of what it was like. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them. But I think I talked about honoring the guys that were there a long time, and even when I got out of the military, I still didn't put POW stuff on my resume. It was still a little bit uncomfortable. I put down I was in the Air Force, so I went to Vietnam, but I never put POW stuff in. I figured if I was going to get a job, I better get a job because I earned it, not because it's POW stuff.
Just 2 fast things you would touch base on. What Major League Baseball did for the POWs, and go talk about that, and I'll remember. Just forgot the other question.
Remember I told you POWs, 591 and 3 million. Okay. So when we got home, people were tripping over themselves to reward us or to thank us for our service. And even today, I do these things to represent Vietnam vets, mostly. But Major League Baseball gave us a pass, and it's a gold-plated pass. And it's good for 2 free tickets to any baseball game at any stadium for life.
It's great. Wow.
Except for the All-Star game and the playoffs. So any regular season game, any stadium, anywhere. We had a little hiccup last year, tried to do something at the Phillies game, and the manager there, who might have been new, said, no, that expired. Well, I guess lifetime to them was 50 years. We fixed that problem. But that was the kind of stuff that made it nice but uncomfortable. You know, and then there were other things like Sears gave us like $500 worth of free clothes, and Ford gave us a free car for a year. I mean, it was really nice, but it was really distorted in terms of reconciling such a handful of people. But you know, we appreciated it, but it was uncomfortable.
Yeah. Ralph, can you share the story about the enlisted man, the sailor in the
Doug
compound?
Hegdahl. I'll tell you a couple stories. All my best stories. We okay for time? All the best stories are Navy guys, which is really uncomfortable. I mentioned Everett Alvarez, the longest term guy, remarkable guy. Doug Hegdahl was a 20-year-old Navy enlisted guy from South Dakota, farm boy. By his own admission, and the stories that he told, was he went into the Navy, enlisted, didn't do very well or pay much attention to basic training, went to survival school, didn't pay any attention, he basically waltzed through it, but was not a model seaman. And I think by the time he went to Vietnam on a ship, I think he might have been an E2, whatever rank that is, seaman apprentice or something, like a corporal or a private. And he was an ammunition loader, so he was always below deck. But one night he decides, he's off the coast of North Vietnam in a ship, he decides he's going to go on deck and see what the hell's going on, because he's below deck all the time. Problem was, it was at night, in the rain, with heavy artillery fire. He shouldn't have been up there. Doug Hegdahl falls off the boat.
Oh.
And nobody knows he's missing for a day because he wasn't supposed to be there, and with all the ruckus going on, nobody knew he was missing. It took a day till they realized he didn't show up for his shift. He got lucky and then he got picked up by a fishing boat. But the next day now, he's in Hanoi. He's in the actually in the Hanoi Hilton. And Doug decides that he's just going to portray himself, if I could forgive me, a term from the 1960s. Doug said, I'm going to pretend that I am totally illiterate, can't read or write, and I'm really mentally retarded. So, and pretend that he was just really stupid, which I contend is not a big issue for Navy people. So he did such a great job with that the North Vietnamese called him the incredibly stupid one. That was the name they gave him. And realized that he was probably harmless, so they gave him a broom and said, you can have extra outside time, Mr. Stupid One. Sweep the dirt around the camp. Just occupy your time. So this 20-year-old now decides, this is 1967 or 68, he decides as he's going around the camp, he's checking in with all the cell blocks, making sure that you're okay, you need any help, are you injured? And then he's also passing intelligence to them from the senior leaders of the camp. So he's like a telephone switchboard now. But he thought that wasn't enough, that he could probably do more. So he collects the dirt that he's been sweeping, and there were a half a dozen vehicles in the camp, and he gets the dirt and throws it in the gas tanks, and incapacitates the fleet. This is the incredibly stupid one. Finally, his senior ranking officer comes to him and says, Hegdahl, if you're offered early release, you are to take it. And Hegdahl, to his credit, says, I can't, that's a violation of the code of conduct, which it was. It said you will not accept parole or special favors from the enemy, which is what it is. And his senior guy says, Hegdahl, you don't understand, I'm giving you a direct order. If you are offered early release, you are to take it. However, you have to memorize 256 names. That's, even though there were more up there, that were the ones they knew of, because they were scattered in all these camps. And you are to deliver those names back to America because, as it turned out, almost half of those names were still listed as missing in action. So it'd be nice to get these names back, but under their POWs. So if you go online and go to YouTube, you can see Doug Hegdahl reciting 256 names. He did it so old McDonald has a farm. That's kind of how he remembered it. But his memory was so significant that he remembered like social security numbers and spouses' names and where they lived. So he was the only one of over 20 early releases, the only one that was actually authorized to get an early release. So the incredibly stupid one did a really big service because he brought back not just intelligence, he ended up teaching at a survival school for a bit, kind of making sure guys like me, a couple of years later, had the best intelligence that we could get.
Ralph, touch base a little bit on you and Dave Drummond, Jessica Lynch were on our radio show. And it was the morning that they announced their Iran-Contra hearings. The families got $6 million and any siblings in the family got $500,000. So I asked in the studio, Dave and Ralph, did you get a bonus when you came home? And good.
The answer was yes. Yes.
They didn't want to tell us. They didn't want to tell me.
The answer was yes. We got $5 a day.
Yeah.
But it was tax-free. I think it was $1.75 for substandard food and $3.25 for substandard housing. And Joe finds that offensive. But I said, we weren't expecting it. We just, we were just glad to get paid. So, one more story, and then I promise I'll be done. John McCain used to tell the story about one of his roommates in the Hanoi Hilton called Mike Christian, another Navy guy. And he and McCain and two other guys were in a small room, probably in the Hanoi Hilton, maybe it could have been anywhere. But it was only a small room, 10-foot square for 4 people. And Mike Christian was a young Navy officer, and he took it upon himself to take a piece of his bamboo mat, which was all we really had, a little thin bamboo mat that acted as a pseudo mattress on your cement slab. And he carved out, refined it a bit, and made a little needle out of it. And then he would start to take pieces of thread from clothing, and he stitched a rudimentary American flag, okay, on the inside of his POW top. And then every day he would take it out, and he and his roommates would do the Pledge of Allegiance. And that was important to them because that's important, freedom. The Vietnamese decided to raid the camp, looking for contraband, which I find to be hysterical because we weren't getting mail. But nonetheless, they were looking for anything. They find White Christian's flag. They take his clothes, then they take him, beat the hell out of him all day, throw him back in the cell at night, and told McCain and the other guys, take care of him. If he lives, he lives. He dies, it's up to you. Well, they didn't have anything to take care of him with other than the liquid that they had, which was like a tea, and clothing. But they cleaned him up as best they could. And they found him later that night, huddled in the corner of this small cell, figuring he was just, sleeping. But as it turned out, he had decided to find another piece of bamboo and started sewing another flag. But he says it wasn't for him. He did it because he knew his roommates would expect the flag the next morning. And I tell the story because it's what sustained us, that made us fight, but it's also what soldiers or any air whatever will do for your fellow man. And that's what he did it for, unselfishly, just did it for them. So freedom you will do almost anything, in defense of your flag and your freedom. Yes, sir.
What base did you fly out of?
I flew out of...
Have you had any contact with your front seater?
Yeah, we talk regularly. Shortfinger, you'll see his picture there. We flew out of a base called Ubon, Thailand.
Correct.
8th TAC Fighter Wing, Robin Olds.
Robin Olds.
Yeah. I really never spent any time in South Vietnam. My bombing missions were Laos and Cambodia and then North Vietnam.
Ralph, who called your house before you got
Oh, sorry, one last story. I'm really screwing up on time.
No,
We got plenty of time.
plenty
Yeah.
of time.
So,
Worried about it at all.
for those of you that are old enough, in October of, I'm there now 6 or 8 months, and in October of '72, in the Hanoi Hilton, we had 6 or 7 rooms, and they would have these barricaded walls separating every room because they didn't want you to communicate with the other rooms. We did it covertly, but they didn't want you doing that. So they let my room out, then another room out, and we were all separate. One day we get up, and all of a sudden, all the walls are down, and all the cell blocks open, and now 250 of us are commingling. First time. And we thought, well, things are great now. We don't know what it was, but we're going to enjoy it while we can. So there were some people I wanted to search for. One was Everett Alvarez, number 1. And the other one was John McCain, who was very distinctive, and he was famous because of his dad, and he had all this prematurely white hair. He was very recognizable. And we had something in common. It was another guy named John Dramisi, who was from South Jersey. You might know John from South Jersey. So he kind of had a Philadelphia connection. I had a Philly connection. McCain had a Philly connection from his service. Plus, we think he was dating everybody in Philly. So we did that. So I just wanted to meet these guys because they were big deals to me. And McCain started asking questions like, tell me about yourself. And I said, well, I'm a schmuck from South Philly. I got married. My daughter was just born. About the usual stuff. My wife is British. Want to go on vacation. Anyway, 15 minutes. That was it. Next day, the walls are back up. We didn't realize that we thought that the war was going to be over back in the States, and that got communicated, but it didn't end, and then the walls went back up. So I saw John McCain for 15 minutes. When I finally get home, this is April, and McCain got released a month earlier. My wife says, oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, about a week ago, I got a call from John McCain. And I said, how? Navy guy, we don't even know this guy. And she goes, yeah, he called to say he met you in Hanoi, and, just give you an update. He's alive, he's really skinny, he's still really ugly, and, you'll probably see him in a month or so. And then he described 15 minutes of conversation, more than I even remember. Every detail we talked about. This was a guy that I didn't know, that took the time to contact my family. He probably had other people to do it, but basically now gave a word of encouragement to my family that alive and healthy, and you'll see him soon. So those are the kind of remarkable things that you find, not just unique to POW camps, but just military people in general.
Ralph, I was intrigued when you talk about how important your faith was.
Yeah.
And the reason I'm intrigued is because, interestingly,
when I went through SEER school in Cuby Point in the Philippines in 1979 or whatever it was. That was a fundamental message that they gave us in SEER school. Was just, they said, if you don't have a faith, find one,
Yeah. Yeah, that was,
or you're gonna die.
they might have gotten that from the feedback.
I think they did,
they
that's
got from us,
exactly what
which
I'm
was
saying.
how significant it was, even if it was just casual. You didn't have to have a strong faith or a prayer faith, just,
They were definitive, they said, if you don't have a faith,
yeah.
get one,
Get one.
or you're gonna die.
That's interesting, yeah, so it was very sustaining. My last message, and I'll hang around if you have any questions, but I gotta go, because the sun's setting, you told me to get the hell off the stage. That's the impression I'm getting. It's amazing, when you're up here, you can say whatever the hell you want. The fact that we were not forgotten or abandoned was not insignificant. Those of you that wore a bracelet or you saw the flag or whatever, we delivered that message of hope, but now 50-some years later, the flag's flying even more than it ever used to on every government building and a lot of other places. So, in a sense, thank you for being here. Also, if you haven't made a donation, by the way, she didn't say to do it, make a donation.
Yeah,
On your way out, write a check. But thank you for not forgetting, and thanks for being here today.